evidence with redacted with the identifiers.
Mr. Depp, you see the text that from Amber that says, "I'm at a coffee meeting now." You see that?
I do, sir.
Right there. So she tells you at 12:41 p.m., "I'm at a coffee meeting now. We'll be home soon." And then you respond, "Holy crack whores. No goddamn meetings. No movies. Why? Why do you deviate from our agreement? What species of meeting? Fuck it. Just tell me when you get home." Did I read that right?
You did, but a coffee meeting.
You didn't want her to take the meeting that she was taking that day, correct?
It seems as though we had an agreement. What seems like we had an agreement to do something together. I'm actually asking what species of meeting. So this is not necessarily an angry text. It's just, why do you deviate from our agreement? It's not about her doing films. How do you think she got Aquaman, sir?
You tell her no goddamn meetings, no movies, because you didn't want her acting. You wanted to control her career, correct?
Objection, compound.
That's patently untrue, and it's a great guess.
Sir. All right, yes, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Sorry.
We can move on. Exhibit 394, please. Defendants Exhibit. Mr. Depp, if you can take a look at the fourth text down. This is a text from you to Dr. Kipper on, it's in the timestamp issue. I believe it was sent on March 8th, 2015 in Australia, timestamped March 7th, 2015. Do you see that?
I do, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, I would move for the admission of 394.
No objection with the proper redactions of the rest of the text messages and the identifiers.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
394 in evidence with redactions.
Permission to publish?
All right. Yes, sir.
Mr. Depp, on this date, right after you had suffered an injury to your finger, you text Dr. Kipper and you say, "Hi, fucked, man. Had another one. I just cannot live like this. She is as full of shit as a Christmas goose. I'm done. No more. The constant insults, the demeaning, belittling, most heartbreaking spew that is only released from a malicious, evil, and vindictive cunt. But you know what? Far more hurtful than her venomous and degrading, endless educational ranting is her hideously and purposely hurtful tirades and her goddamn shocking treatment of the man she was meant to love, above all. Here's the real deal, mate. Her obsession with herself is far more important. She is so fucking ambitious. She's so desperate for success and fame. That's probably why I was acquired, mate. Although she has hammered me with what a sad old man has been I am, Cowan has done me the most cruel of favors. I'm so very sad. I cut the top of my middle finger off. What should I do? Except, of course, go to a hospital. I'm so embarrassed for jumping into anything with her. Fuck the world." Did I read that right?
Yes, Mr. Rottenborn.
So even as you are ranting about Miss Heard to Dr. Kipper, even as you were talking about her ambition and expressing your objections to that, you still admit to him that you cut the top of your middle finger off, correct?
Objection compound.
So state as compound.
You're complaining about her ambition in this text to her, to Dr. Kipper, correct?
I'm realizing that her ambition is far stronger than her supposed feelings for me, yes.
And there's nothing about this text that's trying to protect her.
Protect her?
And
from what?
And you tell Dr. Kipper, I cut the top of my middle finger off in this text, correct?
It's just the way it was worded. It doesn't mean that I actually literally cut my finger off after, at the age of 12, finding the only thing that gave me peace, which is playing the guitar. Very unlikely. Why didn't I start lopping off digits when I was 13 then?
Just the way it was worded. Now, Miss Heard wasn't the only one who had a problem with you can take that down. Miss Heard wasn't the only one who had a problem with your drinking and abuse of alcohol, correct?
Objection compound.
All right, I'll state the objection if you want.
Miss Heard wasn't the only one who had a problem with your drinking, correct?
Sir, if anyone had a problem with my drinking at any time in my life, it was me. The only person that I have ever abused in my life is myself.
In fact, you tried to hide your drinking from your daughter, Lily Rose, didn't you?
Objection relevance.
What's the relevance of...
When your nerves are
But,
pushed...
sir, if you
Can we approach, Your Honor?
Okay.
Pardon?
Can you pull up Exhibit 207, please? You scroll down, please. Thank you. Mr. Depp, I'd like to direct your attention to the last text on this page. It's a text from you to Kevin Murphy. He was your estate manager, correct?
He was.
This is a text from you to Kevin Murphy on January 21st, 2014, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admission of that portion of Defendants Exhibit 207 with redactions.
With the identifiers redacted, that's fine. Thank you.
207?
Permission to publish?
Yes, sir.
And in this text to Kevin Murphy on January 21st, 2014, you say, just trying to get over my shocking discussion with Vanessa that lasted 5+ hours. Vanessa's your former partner, correct?
She's the mother of my children, yes.
The mother of your children, that's right. And then you say, I feel ill and have invested my guts into some side corner. Now, Lily Rose hates me because she thinks I'm drinking, and she's right. But I can't admit, or I fucking die in her eyes. Thanks for that one, Vanessa. Come to master in main house. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Can you pull up Exhibit 1092, please? Mr. Depp, is this a picture of you passed out in a chair during daylight hours?
Again, isn't passed out, that's a very specific term. Sleep could be one. Passed out.
Let's try it this way. This is a picture of you in a chair, correct?
That is correct.
Move for the admission of 1092, Your Honor.
Any objection?
I'm relevance, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm trying to move this along, and when we stop with
Well,
relevance,
you want to lay a foundation? I just don't.
this is a picture of Mr. Depp. We've introduced another, on Thursday, another picture of that.
What is the date of this photograph? I'm sorry.
Can you take that down and put up Exhibit 470, Michelle, please? Mr. Depp, is the bottom text on this page a text exchange or a text message from you to your personal assistant, Stephen Deuters, on September 3rd, 2015?
That's what it looks like, yes, sir.
Your Honor, I'd move for the admission of this exhibit with just that text and the appropriate redactions. Exhibit 470.
Yeah. Again, of relevance, Your Honor. And cumulative.
I'll allow this one if we
Thank you, Your Honor.
with the redactions.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
All right, yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Depp, in the effort to move this along, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to start with the word main bits, which is 5 lines down. You write to Mr. Deuters on September 3rd, 2015, main bits needed are Xanax and Adderall, and I want no judgment from Kipper or Debbie. Kipper means Dr. David Kipper, correct?
That's correct.
And Debbie means Debbie Lloyd, your sobriety nurse, correct?
That is correct.
Just found out from Joel last night how much I spent on having Kipper and Debbie around. Millions and fucking millions, mate. All the while, Debbie just hung around Broad, BCH, and gave me new meds like every 2 weeks. She was on set maybe 4 times. Wow. And 5 money symbols. Sorry, just how it is. Did I read that right?
You did.
Can we pull up Exhibit 587, please? This is a recording, Your Honor.
And I already have 5787A, so this is 587B.
587B, Your Honor. The excerpts to be played are 1940 through 1953 and 2304 through 2329.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. 587B in evidence.
In that clip, Mr. Depp, you tell Ms. Heard, I'm never getting clean and sober, correct?
It sounds like, to me, that yeah, it's either that or I have never been clean and sober.
Thank
It's
you.
one of the
Let's
two.
play 2304, please.
In the big picture, the big scheme of things, it does nothing but hurt us. And why? Because the coke and booze doesn't make it easier for you to see how clearly that it.
You gotta stop with the coke and booze.
All the coke you've done today, and all the booze you've drank today.
By the way,
has it helped you? Has it helped us?
Just got the coke
Has it helped us?
today.
Yeah, I know, because yesterday you were 1,000 times better. Yesterday did we?
I'd like to turn now to a few more of your words around the time that you went into detox, about how you viewed Amber's role in that process, Mr. Depp. Can you please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 120_40? And Your Honor, 120_41 was admitted the other day, but I'd like to introduce this as a separate exhibit.
So 120B, and that would be _40, you said, 40?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Any objection to that?
If I may, it just came up on the screen.
Okay.
Mr. Depp, while they're looking at that, is the second text from the bottom a text that you sent to Amber's mom, Paige, on August 19th, 2014?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
And this is when you were either in the middle of or finishing up your detox process from roxycodone, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And no objection?
No objection.
Okay. 120B in evidence. You want to publish? Or as is, correct?
With the other
Okay.
That's fine.
text messages redacted.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, with you? Okay, yep, sure.
Okay, publish.
And in this text message that you write Amber's mom on August 19th, 2014, you say, "My dearest Paige, how unbelievably kind and pure your message was. I am beyond thankful to have you in my life. There is no luckier man on this earth to have the strength that Amber gives me and the full support of each of you individually that I've gotten helps immeasurably. I don't need to explain the horrors to you. You know as well as I. What you do need to know that your daughter has risen far above the nightmarish task of taking care of this poor old junkie. Never a second has gone by that she didn't look out for me or have her eyes on me to make sure that I was okay. YN words are truly feeble in attempting to explain her heroism in a text. Suffice to say that I have never met or loved a woman or a thing more. She has the strength of 1,000 men, and that is due to no one or nothing but you, sweetheart. Thank you. I love you. Your son, Outlaw. Did I read that correctly?
You did, sir.
I'd like to take a look at another document. Exhibit 272, please. Is this a text message that you shared, a text message exchange between you and Amber the following day on April 20th, 2014?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, permission to, or I'd move for the admission of Exhibit 272 and ask for permission to publish.
With the identifiers removed, we have no objection.
All right, remove the identifiers. All right, 272 in evidence as redacted.
Now, Mr. Depp, you testified on Thursday that you saw nothing wrong with referring to Amber as a lesbian camp counselor when she was trying to get you to stop using drugs. But let's take a look at what you say in this text.
She had used that term before.
In this text, Mr. Depp, you say, "Just to let you know that I'm fine, my angel. I miss you, of course, but this was the right thing to do to speed up the process. I love you more than life. Yours, Steve." Did I read that correctly?
You did.
You can take that down. Now, you've brought this lawsuit about the op-ed specifically, but for years prior to the date that Ms. Heard wrote the op-ed, there were numerous negative news stories about you. You'd agree with that, correct?
Objection, compound.
All right, I'll sustain it to compound.
For years prior to 2018, when Amber wrote the op-ed, there were numerous negative news stories about you that were released into the public, correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'll allow it if you can answer.
By 2018, you're saying?
Correct.
Yes, it all started with Ms. Heard going directly to a court to get a TRO, which is with a bruise on her face and paparazzi. That was the sort of beginning of the ball rolling down the hill and gaining momentum.
There were lots of negative stories about you prior to May 27th, 2016, when Amber went into court, correct?
Objection asked and answered.
Now it's 2016. I'll allow it if you can answer.
There are plenty of negative stories about you prior to that date, weren't there?
Sir, I've been in the racket of Hollywood since 1984.
Mr. Depp, I'm asking you a yes or no question. There were plenty of negative news stories about you prior to May 27th, 2016, correct?
From 1984 up until then, they're both. So, of course, people read negative stories.
Sure. And you just testified to the jury that it all started on May 27th, 2016. So that's why I asked you to clarify about the negative stories prior to that date. And you'd agree that there were, correct?
Can you be specific about the stories? Of course, there's been negative stories.
Permission to approach, Your Honor?
All right.
Your Honor, I have here numerous exhibits in one sort of compendium, all press articles about Mr. Depp, if I may approach.
Your Honor, in having received this, I would like to preemptively lodge a hearsay lack of foundation. And
He hasn't got him in evidence yet. Are you moving?
No,
these
I'm
to evidence?
happy to approach, but they're certainly not being admitted for the truth of the matter asserted. But I'm happy to approach and discuss if you'd like. Mr. Depp, if you could please take a look at the stack of articles in front of you.
Yes, it's a stack of hit pieces
Yes, the first one is
generated
called
by Ms. Heard's publicity team.
Mr. Depp, we're going to try to get through this as quickly as possible.
I'm just
I'm going to ask you
stating
about
that they
the
are.
first one. Well, we're going to talk about them. The first one is entitled, is from The Guardian. You see that?
Apparently drunk.
Yes, and this is an article from November 15th, 2014, entitled, Apparently Drunk Johnny Depp Cut Off at Hollywood Film Awards Ceremony, correct?
That's what it says, yes, sir.
And the next article is an article from May 7th, 2016. It's entitled, Johnny Depp, Friends and Family Seriously Concerned About Him. Here's Why.
Yes,
Correct.
How did they know?
The next article from May 1st, 2017, before
Yes.
Ms. Heard filed for a restraining order, a year and a half before she published, this would be after May 1st, 2017. The headline is, Johnny Depp has a clear and epic sense of entitlement, ex-managers say. Published in the Hollywood Reporter, correct?
I was in a lawsuit with him, sir.
The next article from May 10th, 2017 is entitled, Johnny Depp, a star in crisis and the insane story of his missing millions. Did I read that right?
That's straight from the same lawsuit, sir.
The next article, also from May 10th, 2017, a year and a half before the op-ed was published, says, Johnny Depp reportedly drank heavily and was constantly late on the new Pirates movie set. Did I read that right?
You did, reportedly.
The next
These are
article,
all hit
also
pieces.
from May
These are
10th,
drags, sir.
2017. Mr.
This is
Depp,
a pathetic attempt.
Mr. Depp, please just respond to the question that I'm asking you.
What's your
The next
question,
question,
Mr.
the next document, an article published in Vanity Fair on May 10th, 2017,
Yes.
is entitled, Johnny Depp's Financial Woes Might Sink the Next Pirates of the Caribbean. Did I read that right?
You did. I don't know.
The
how
next
my
article,
financial woes would do
May
that.
25th, 2017, a year and a half before the op-ed was published, an article entitled, Where Did It All Go Wrong for Johnny Depp? After a string of flops and a ton of bad press, Johnny Depp's star power looks as wobbly as Jack Sparrow on a plank. Did I read that right?
You read that very, very well.
The next one, Hollywood Reporter, May 27th, 2017. Headline, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Diminishing Returns of Johnny Depp. Did I read that right?
You certainly did. Hollywood Reporter were very nice to me at the time.
July 12th, 2017. Why are all of Johnny Depp's movies bombing at the box office? Did I read that right?
You certainly did.
November 4th, 2017. A year and a month before Amber published the op-ed. Headline, Johnny Depp allegedly showed up drunk to movie premiere, reports say. Did I read that
Allegedly
correctly?
Reports say. This is hearsay.
June
you know?
21st, 2018,
Your favorite word.
6 months before the op-ed was published. Vanity Fair article, The Real Reason Johnny Depp Used an Earpiece on a Film Set.
I think that was
I
explained
read
in
that
court
correctly?
the other day. Oh, you did, yeah.
June 21st, 2018, 6 months before the op-ed was published. A Rolling Stone article entitled The Trouble with Johnny Depp. Multi-million-dollar lawsuits, a haze of booze and hash, a marriage gone very wrong, and a lifestyle he can't afford inside the trials of Johnny Depp. Did I read that right?
You did. You should read the article.
And the last one, June 22nd, 2018, the Daily Mail, vodka for breakfast, 72-hour drug binges, and spending sprees that beggar belief. Alison Boshoff reveals why Hollywood's reeling over what's being called Johnny Depp's career suicide note. Did I read that correctly?
You did. Who's Alison Boshoff and how does she know?
Mr. Depp, you can't name
Oh,
a single
I see.
actress who has benefited in her career by coming forward and stating that she was the victim of domestic violence, can you?
I'm sorry. what was
Objection
that?
calls for speculation.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
When Amber made abuse accusations against you in May 2016, fair to say it got a lot of press attention, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
When Amber made abuse accusations against you in May 2016, you became aware that it got a lot of press attention, correct?
Very quickly, I became aware.
And she became associated with those abuse accusations that she made against you in May 2016, correct? To your knowledge.
Objection calls for speculation.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
You became associated with those domestic abuse accusations that she made against you, correct?
I think that's clear.
And you understood that she became associated with those same accusations that she made, correct? You've testified to that.
Well, she had a choice. I didn't.
And you've talked about the immediate impact that those accusations on May 27th, 2016 allegedly had on your career, correct?
Yes.
You testified earlier in your examination on direct that when Amber made those accusations in 2016, you said you lost, quote, nothing less than everything, correct?
That is correct, sir.
But you didn't try to get the restraining order lifted in 2016, did you?
I don't. If she wanted a restraining
It's a yes or
order,
no question. You didn't try to get the restraining order
No, why
lifted,
would
did you?
I?
And you didn't have a divorce trial where you could respond to Amber's accusations of abuse in 2016, did you?
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
I'm asking him if he had a trial as a
All right,
fact.
I'll allow-
You didn't have a divorce trial where you could respond to Amber's accusations of abuse, did you?
No, there were no charges pressed against
You
me.
chose
She didn't
not
tell
to.
the police that I had done anything. She didn't mention my name.
And you didn't have a California divorce judge decide these facts, did you?
Objection asked and answered.
I'll
You
sustain the
chose
objection.
you chose not to try to clear your name at that time through any sort of legal proceeding, correct?
Objection asked and answered.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
And you chose to sign a divorce agreement in which you stated that Amber had not made any false statements about you for financial gain. We looked at that, correct?
Objection asked and answered.
Asked and answered. I'll sustain the objection. Next
In
question.
fact, you waited until Amber wrote the op-ed in the Washington Post in December of 2018 to file a lawsuit against her, correct?
That is correct.
Can you pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 2, please?
It was the only time that I
Permission
was
to
able
publish,
to
Your Honor?
speak and use my own voice.
You chose not to sue the Washington Post in this lawsuit, correct?
Two evidence.
Objection relevance asked and answered.
It's not been asked and answered.
Hasn't been asked and answered, but I'm not sure what the relevance is.
You chose to sue only Miss Heard and not the newspaper that published this article, correct?
Objection compound.
All right, I'll sustain as to compound.
You chose not to sue the Washington Post, correct?
Objection relevance.
I'll sustain the objection.
You only sued the author of this article, Amber Heard, correct?
Which seems she was the one making the statements. Yes, I had the opportunity to fight back.
Permission to publish Exhibit 2, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 2 is already in evidence, so we'll...
Mr. Depp, you realize that the only job for this jury to decide,
Yes, sir.
its only job, is to determine whether this op-ed and this op-ed alone is defamatory.
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
I'll sustain the objection.
This is the only writing that's the subject of this lawsuit that you brought, correct?
Same objection.
It's fact, Your Honor. He
I'll allow
brought the
that
lawsuit.
question. I'll allow that question.
This is a version of that story of the op-ed that I've never seen. The one that was published before, the only one I've ever seen is the one that was published prior to this. They changed the title because they were in fear of trouble.
Well, I'd move to strike that last testimony, Your Honor.
Well, I mean,
Whether it's the online edition or this edition in the paper, this article is the only statement, the only publication of anything that's the subject of the lawsuit that you brought, correct?
Objection asked and answered.
I'll sustain the objection.
This op-ed, Mr. Depp, does not discuss any of the details of your relationship that we've seen in texts and emails and recordings over the past few days, does it?
Objection compound and asked and answered.
I'll sustain both objections.
In fact, this article doesn't contain any details of your relationship with Miss Heard.
Objection asked and answered.
I'll sustain the
The
objection.
only thing that this article states, Mr. Depp, is that in 2016, Amber made accusations of domestic abuse. Correct.
It was clear that she'd made allegations in 2016.
And she
so
did that when
then,
she
yes.
obtained a restraining order against you in 2016, correct?
Yeah, I suppose, yes. Yeah,
And even if you disagree with the accusations that she made against you in May 2016, it is a true fact that she did make those accusations in 2016 and got a restraining order against you, correct?
Objection compound asked and answered.
Sustain the objections. Next question.
To your knowledge, the words that Ms. Heard used in this article about getting a restraining order against you in 2016, those are true, correct?
I'm sorry?
Objection
words that
misstates
misheard
the
you-
document.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. You want-
Can you go to the third paragraph? Pull up the third paragraph, please. The statement that then 2 years ago, Ms. Heard became a public figure representing domestic abuse, that is true, isn't it?
I'm not sure what we're looking at.
Objection
Oh, I see.
calls for a legal conclusion.
So I'll sustain the objection. I'll
It's
sustain the objection.
And in 2016, for the first time publicly, Ms. Heard accused you of domestic abuse, correct?
In 2016?
Yes.
That's correct.
No further questions.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, why don't we go ahead and take our morning recess for 15 minutes. Do not do any outside research and do not talk to anybody about the case, okay? We'll come back in 15 minutes. seated and redirect.
Good afternoon, Mr. Depp.
Hi.
Could we please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 1? Mr. Depp, is this the version of the op-ed that you recognize?
Yes, ma'am. That's the one.
I would move Exhibit 1, Plaintiff's Exhibit 1 into evidence and ask that it be published to the jury.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, 1 in evidence and publish.
Mr. Depp, when did you see Ms. Heard's December 18th, 2018 op-ed for the first time?
It was, presented to me by one of my team. I can't remember, but it was within a day or so of it, a couple of days of it having been written, I believe.
And what was your reaction when you saw it?
Shock.
Why were you shocked?
Because at that point, it had been a good solid two or so years of this, of the accusations, of the allegations, planted firmly on my back, so something that I had to carry with me, and I just couldn't believe that it was continuing. That it was continuing in such a way that it was clear that the more bad press, the more hit pieces that came out on me, the more of these stories of Ms. Heard and her righteous chase against me. It wasn't stopping, and it's difficult to once you've chewed on it for a couple of years, it becomes pretty difficult to swallow anymore. As it was completely untrue.
How did you feel when you saw the op-ed for the first time?
Objection asked and answered just now.
My prior question was about his reaction.
All right, I'll allow it.
Hurts. Yeah, a blinding hurt. It was like somebody had hit me in the back of the head with a 2x4. And as it said, I had had no ability to speak prior to, because even if I had done an interview to try to explain myself, it turned into a hit piece. So my mouth was shut. And this was the opportunity where I thought, something's got to be done. It's just got to be done. I couldn't take it anymore.
When did you first learn that Disney was not going to recast you in the Pirates franchise?
It was probably 2 or 3 days after this op-ed appeared. One of my crew, again, I don't remember who had sent me, excuse me, had sent me a piece that was in some magazine, and Sean Bailey, who was the number 3.
Objection, hearsay.
I don't know yet. I'll overrule it at this point.
Thank you.
May I continue, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Sean Bailey, who was the the third in line, as I suppose, in the upper echelon of Disney, just basically said in the
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor,
What Sean Bailey said.
this is about him
It's in
learning
an
about this. It's
article.
not for the truth.
It is the truth. She's
If
asking.
you want to approach.
Mr. Depp, could you please explain to the jury who Sean Bailey is? I think you were starting to.
Yes, I'll try again. Sean Bailey is the number 3, or was at the time. I don't know what his status is anymore, but at the time he was the number 3 sort of upper echelon of Disney top dogs, and Sean Bailey was quoted as saying that...
Objection, hearsay.
Mr. Depp, where was Sean Bailey quoted, without getting into what he was quoted as saying?
He was quoted in whatever the article was that that was brought to my attention.
And can you please just clarify what article you're referring to?
I don't know what journal it came from. I don't know what magazine. I don't know any of that, so I don't know who did the interview with him.
Objection, lack of foundation.
I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Mr. Depp, how did you feel when you learned that you were being dropped from the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise?
Well, it was the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. It was a character that Captain Jack Sparrow was a character that I had built from the ground up, and was something that I of course put a lot of as you do with all characters, but you put a lot of yourself into the character. So, and also having worked on these films with these people and having added much of myself, much of my own rewriting of the dialogue and scenes and the jokes and whatever they are, I didn't quite understand how that, after that long relationship and quite a successful relationship, certainly for Disney, that suddenly I was guilty until proven innocent.
Up until the point that you learned that you were not going to be in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise any longer, what was your intention with respect to future Pirates movies?
The last thing that I knew from I say there's the producer team, there's the creative team, and there were many discussions. I, in fact, had been approached to take part in writing
Objection,
Pirates
hearsay.
6.
Mr. Depp, what was your intention with respect to future Pirates movies, aside from what you'd been asked to do?
My feeling was that these characters should be able to have their proper goodbye, as it were. A franchise can only last for so long. And there's a way to end a franchise like that, and I thought that the characters deserved to have their way out of to end the franchise on a very good note. And I planned on continuing until it was time to stop.
Mr. Depp, last week, Mr. Rottenborn asked you about a quote where you said you wouldn't come back to the Pirates franchise for $300 million and 1,000,000 alpacas. Do you remember that?
I do.
When relative to learning that you would no longer be a part of the Pirates franchise, did you make that statement?
I think long before I made the statement, there was a very deep and distinct sense of having been betrayed by the people that I had been working with, the people that I had worked hard for, the people that I had delivered a character to, that they initially despised somehow. Even I stuck to my guns with the character, and it seemed to work. So,
do you recall when specifically you made that statement about the $300 million and the 100 alpacas?
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled. I'll allow it.
I believe I made that statement during a press conference in the San Sebastian at the San Sebastian Film Festival when I was asked about my situation.
And what year would that have been, if you can recall?
I believe it was last year or so.
Can we please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 804? Mr. Depp, do you recognize this document?
As soon as my eyes go on, I hopefully will. Scaramanga Brothers, yes. Spire, 4 and 5, yes.
What is this document?
I don't quite know. I'd have to read it to get some understanding of it.
Could we scroll through so Mr. Depp can look at the rest of this document?
Oops. Oh, there it goes. It looks, this appears to me to be some species of contract, no?
Is this a contract that you entered into?
With Disney.
Your Honor, I'd ask that Plaintiff's Exhibit 804 be moved into evidence and published.
Any objection?
I think it's outside the scope of direct or cross-examination.
I'll overrule on that objection.
Okay. And I'll reserve other objections to portions of the document, depending on what she's going to ask about. Could be hearsay.
But she's asking to put it all into evidence right now.
Well, then I would object to that at this point.
Are you going to come forward? Let's see. just get a redacted copy of that at some point. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Depp, if I could direct your attention to Section 6 of the contract, which is on pages 8 through 10 of the document. Mr. Depp, what does this reflect?
Sorry. It appears to be the agreement of Pirates 4 and 5, compensation and merchandise.
Mr. Depp, at this time, how many other franchise films had you been a part of?
At that time, Alice in Wonderland. Oh boy. Alice in Wonderland. I'm so pathetic when it comes to knowing what movies I've done. I'm sorry. I don't watch them. I feel better not watching them. What was the question again?
How many?
I have order in the court, or I will have you removed. Understood? Thank you.
How many other franchise films had you been a part of at the time of this contract?
There was a third. There was Pirates. There was with Warner Brothers, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and then Crimes of Grindelwald.
And how does the compensation reflected in this contract compare to that what you receive for the other franchises that you've been a part of?
Objection, Foundation.
He just established that he was a member of other franchise films at this point.
And he hasn't established a foundation that he knows how he was compensated.
I'll overrule the objection if you can answer.
I believe the compensation, obviously, all the pay and back end and all those things are negotiated by agents, lawyers, and this was comparatively this is my salary on that film, and other salaries were of a similar status, I suppose.
If I could direct your attention to the 12th page of the document.
Yes. Oh.
Is this your signature, Mr. Depp?
Yes, it is.
Okay. We can take this down. Thank you. Mr. Depp, I recall that you testified that you don't know during a given period what movies you were working on. So my question is, who would know that?
Well, first and foremost, is my agent, or agents. I do recall a couple of the other films that I had made after. One was initially called Richard Says Goodbye, and that was, they changed the name to The Professor, and during all of the nastiness over the past 6 years, that film went straight to pay-per-view. There was another film called Minimata that was produced. It was my company, Infinitum Nile. We had developed a film called Minimata about Eugene Smith, and the Minimata, well, the mercury poisoning of a very small fishing village in southern Japan. There was that one, and then there was a film called Waiting for the Barbarians with Mark Rylance and Robert Pattinson. Those were 3 films that I'd done.
Mr. Depp, during your cross-examination, Mr. Rottenborn showed you a number of text messages between you and Paul Bettany. Do you remember that?
I do.
Could you please explain to the jury what your relationship with Mr. Bettany is?
Mr. Bettany and I had, we'd met while I was making a film called The Tourist in Venice, and we were, it was an instant connection. He's born and bred in the UK and has that English sort of dry, kind of obtuse, abstract sense of humor. And that was one of the things that we connected on, is taking, even if it was a difficult or unpleasant situation, we would, do our best to deal with it with humor, as opposed to just a constant complaint or whining or anything of that nature. We dealt with it with humor, albeit sometimes as these are private texts that have been, there was a lot of in context. It's important to know that none of it was ever intended to be real, and the language that's used, which I am ashamed that that has to be spread on the world like peanut butter. For example, the text that is about burning Ms. Heard it's directly from Monty Python, in the sketch about burning witches, and then drowning the witches. This is a film that we'd all watched when we were 10, and it's just irreverent and abstract humor. That's what we were referring to in those texts.
The text message that you just referenced, other than Mr. Bettany, who else saw that text message at the time that it was sent?
No one. Of course not.
Based on your own observations, how would you describe Mr. Bettany's relationship with Miss Heard while you and Miss Heard were together?
Abominable.
Why was that?
Ms. Heard despised Mr. Bettany mainly because we had become such close friends, and for her he was a threat, and would take me away from her with regard to if Paul Bettany was getting the attention from me. That was a showstopper. It would cause all kinds of unpleasantries, to the point of where when we were on the island with Mr. Bettany, his wife, and his 4 children, Ms. Heard and Mr. Bettany got into some debate over lunch, and I just remember that whenever Mr. Bettany tried to make a point, she would talk over him, and then it started to get quite rude. She got mean, and she got loud, and then I believe it was his 18-year-old boy who was getting ready to go to he's a very bright, brilliant kid. He entered the conversation because this was something to do with what he'd studied in school, and he knew quite a lot about it, and he voiced his opinion, and Ms. Heard demeaned that young man to the point of where he burst into tears and walked away. And it was at that point that I had spoken to Ms. Heard and said, that's just unacceptable. That behavior is unacceptable. You have no right to demean that boy. You cannot always be right. You should try being wrong sometime, because you might learn something. And then I asked her I thought it was best that she leave the island.
Could we please pull up Defendants Exhibit 245? And Mr. Depp, I believe this is another text message with Mr. Bettany that you were shown on your cross-examination. And directing your attention to the text message at the top of the page from May 30th, 2014. Do you recognize this text message you sent to Paul Bettany?
Yes, I do.
And could you please describe to the jury what you are conveying to Mr. Bettany in this message?
This again is I suppose an example of the way that I write and express myself. That is to say, you stretch your situation out to give him the understanding that you're drowning, essentially. So everything that I say here is, in fact, an impossibility for the human body. I would have been, well, I would have certainly at least had to be rushed to the hospital for a stomach pump. There's a line here that, if you don't mind, I say that when I say I'm done, I am admittedly too fucked in the head to spray my rage at the one I love, for little reason as well. I'm too old to be that guy, but pills are fine. The pills that were referenced were the pills that that I was coming off of, and they were the only thing that could give me some semblance of the same numbing effect that I searched for as a child with my mother. And saying that I was too messed up in the head was, it's kind of like if you've been told since you were a child that everything you do is wrong, and that I shouldn't have even been alive, or whatever, joyous little treats that my then very sick, very ill mother brought to me. Ms. Heard was well aware of my past, my childhood, therefore was very adept at knowing exactly which buttons to push. So at this point, I mean, I felt like, well, I was that little boy again in my head, like, I guess I am incapable of doing anything right. I guess I will never be happy. I guess that this is who I am. I can't get along with this person. But it's confusion, you know. It's nothing that you can. It's nothing that anyone could sustain for any length of time. It's nothing that anyone should have to sustain for any length of time when you're being demeaned, berated, judged, and treated like a lesser animal. I'm treated as if I'm only surrounded by yes men, and that I'm a bad father, and that these things were endless. They were endless, and there was no call for them. It's hard to understand why someone that is supposed to love you could be that cruel. And there's also times where you just say, okay, I'm gonna try to not have I won't fall for the argument. I won't participate in the argument. Because I knew where it would go, into her circular pattern of psychological abuse.
Mr. Depp, what do you mean when you use the term blackout in this text message?
Blackout. Yes, because I'm talking about 1,000 Red Bulls and vodkas, 1,000 of them, 2 bottles of champagne, no food for days, half a bottle of whiskey. Those things, had that been all absolutely true, would have not only caused a blackout, but it would have caused a severe alcohol poisoning, overdose. I would have had to have gone immediately. If that were true, I would have had to have been taken to a hospital, or I'd just die. So, no, blackout is when someone gets so drunk on alcohol, essentially on alcohol. But the pills that I had my addiction, that I was addicted to, the oxycodone, which are very, very powerful opiates. Two of those would knock me out. That is to say, so there's blackout, which is a person could be wide awake and wreaking havoc, or having a giggle in a blackout and never remember it. But when you are, when you've taken the prescription medication, it knocks you out. You are certainly not, well, you're not in any condition obligation to, first of all, swing at anyone. You are out. You go on what's called the nod, and then it takes you away into sleep. It's just very deep sleep. And I found that much more accepting than having to hear constant badgering and insults.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to show you Defendants Exhibit 153, which I believe Mr. Rottenborn also showed you last week.
Yes.
Do you remember seeing this during Mr. Rottenborn's examination of you last week?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, I'd like to show you the full text exchange, which is in Plaintiff's Exhibit 120. And since there's been a number of text messages drawn from this document, this would be Plaintiff's Exhibit 120C.
Which page would that be, or underscore?
This would be 4 and 5, Your Honor.
4 and 5, thank you.
Mr. Depp, do you recognize these text messages?
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, I'd move Plaintiff's 120C into evidence and ask that it be published to the jury.
All right, 120C in evidence, publish.
Mr. Depp, who are you communicating with in these text messages?
In fact, though it says Marino, these are texts between my ex, that is to say, the Vanessa Paradis, the mother of my children. And this is again, abstract humor that we're conveying back and forth to one another. This was all, it was a joke. It certainly wasn't about Miss Heard. We didn't speak of her much together.
Do you recall what you were talking about?
I don't recall who it was. I don't recall who it was, but it was someone who had, for some reason, I think it was, I think that the possibility is that 2013, it might have been, we had a nanny.
Relevance. The question was, who was this about?
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay.
Mr. Depp, I'd also like to show you Defendants Exhibit 143, which I believe Mr. Rottenborn also showed you last week. Do you remember seeing this email exchange? You could scroll down as well, please. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Who are you exchanging these emails with?
Stephen Duders, who was at the time was my assistant.
And what are you and Mr. Duders discussing here?
Gobbledygook, essentially. It was as I remember, it was a day of work, and there were times when I would send a text to Mr. Duders, because he's the worrisome type. I would send him a text in jest, of course, and to get a rise out of him, to get some reaction out of him. So, I would tell him things like, I woke up and I'm bleeding profusely from the inside of my ear. Is that normal? it would be things like that. So this is exactly the same kind of thing. I think we were even referencing The Hangover, the film The Hangover, in part of this, about the Mike Tyson and sort of bizarre circus that I was telling him that I had in my room, and that there was blood everywhere. It was a joke to just sort of throw him off, worry him, and ultimately it was a joke, and we were laughing about it.
Mr. Depp, what if any portion of this email exchange is literally true?
We're all set to leave here at approximately 1:30 p.m. Hope you rested well.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to talk to you about some text messages that Mr. Rottenborn showed you where you refer to the monster, and this is in the context of in conversations that don't include Ms. Heard. Do you remember seeing some of those communications?
Yes.
Okay. First, I'd like to show you Defendants Exhibit 427, please, which is a text message from you to Jerry Judge. How are you using the term monster in this context when you're communicating with Mr. Judge?
The monster could essentially, it could be two separate things. The monster in her eyes was my
Objection as to what the monster was in Ms. Heard's eyes, Your Honor.
All right. I'll sustain as to her eyes if you want to.
Okay.
Yes. Rephrase.
The monster was defined by Ms. Heard as this out of control
Same objection,
thing.
Your Honor. What Ms. Heard's view of the monster was is not for this witness to say.
Mr. Depp, how do you know how Ms. Heard defined the word monster?
She said the words to me.
Okay. And what words did she say with respect to the term monster?
It was her go-to phrase, and it was the go-to phrase for me being, again, as has been embellished and elaborated, the drug use or the drink or the whatever, but the monster was, for me, and again, you start to think about these things and you put it in your own head and what the real context is. The monster was sobriety. The monster was trying to be sober because I was plagued by these requests to stop drinking. But the monster could also be if a conversation, if something starts as a conversation, which would quickly ramp up to quite an antagonizing argument, if I responded to her, if I took part in the verbal back and forth where people do in life end up saying obscenities, screaming obscenities at one another, or calling them names, or when it gets to that point, I mean, the monster was just for me, was just the guy who actually was dumb enough to continue to take part in arguments that would ultimately get nowhere. So that is one of the reasons why I would try to get away from Ms. Heard and not participate in her debates and the knowledge that she wanted to express to me, and circular and painful insults that were just constant. It was rapid fire. So I stopped participating in those. I tried to walk away. I tried to go to another room, even to the point of locking myself in rooms so that she just could pound on the door and scream. That was clearly a mistake. I should have never fallen for that or taken the bait to allow myself to get into a conversation which led to an argument, which led to physical violence. It was not going to be good, so I would just walk away, which drove her through the roof.
So, Mr. Depp, why would you use the term monster when communicating with people other than Miss Heard?
Well, because I heard it all the time. I mean, it was, as I said, that was her go-to. The monster. The monster's here. The monster's back. Monster. So I would refer to the monster again in terms of with Elton or with friends Patti Smith. The monster was like with Elton. It was just a monster. Was I let the monster creep back in or something. That is sobriety. That's what I'm telling him is I have failed, and I've had a drink, or I've been drinking. But my drinking again was not to excess. I would never went into blackouts or anything of that nature. I was disappointed in myself for not staying there. Although when you are constantly in a position to be harassed by your beloved other, what else could I do? I wanted to be numb. I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to feel that, especially from one who had professed such love for me, but gave me mostly hatred.
Your Honor, I'm about to switch subjects, so if this would be a good time for the lunch break.
All right. We started a little later, so I don't mind going a little further.
Okay.
If you want to do that, go ahead.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to show you Defendants Exhibit 161. I believe Mr. Rottenborn showed you this last week and again today.
Yes.
Do you recognize these text messages as between you and Miss Heard?
Yes, I do.
Why are you informing Miss Heard that there's a book called Disco Bloodbath?
When I texted her, 2:30 in the afternoon, I was in a bookstore, a used bookstore, or a bookstore that had a lot of first editions and things like that, which was sort of a passion. And I saw a book called Disco Bloodbath, and I thought it was a funny title. I can't say that I was necessarily referencing anything other than I thought it was a funny title, Disco Bloodbath. It sounded like a sort of a bad slasher movie to me. So I said, just thought you should know that there exists a book titled Disco Bloodbath. That's all. And then she said, we need that book. And then she asked me, is it about last Friday night by any chance? And then my answer to her, how can you make me smile about such a hideous moment? The fact is, this is a light-hearted exchange that she's even saying, we need that book. Then she makes a reference to last Friday night, which I don't recall what last Friday night was or whatever, so I just how can you make me smile about such a hideous moment? A hideous moment could have been some grotesque thing that we saw on television. It could have been anything. I don't recall now, but all I was saying is, and it even says at the end of my text, that's all. Disco bloodbath, you know. So this was not we were not butting heads in this exchange whatsoever. It was very lighthearted.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to show you Defendants Exhibit 375, which is another document Mr. Rottenborn showed you last week.
Yes.
Could you please remind the jury what's reflected in this photograph?
This is from Australia. On March 8th, I believe it was, where after my finger had been, the tip of my finger had been taken off, I began to, I was in such shock, I just started writing on the mirror, on walls, and basically what these were for me to Ms. Heard were reminders of moments in our past where I had caught her, where it was revealed to me, even by her, that she had been caught in lies that she had told me. So that's what these are in reference to. The red, the lipstick that says, call Carly Simon, call Carly Simon, she said it better, babe. In reference to You're So Vain, I am imagining. But that's not, I didn't, the Carly Simon message is not mine, that's Miss Heard's.
So let's just break this down a little bit. Who wrote the text that's in black on the mirror?
That would be me.
And what does that say?
She loves, I don't know, like naked Hollywood or something. An artist of, I don't know what the rest says, but what that is Ms. Heard had come to me, and she was seemed to be seriously concerned about how she was being portrayed in Hollywood. She was concerned that because she had done films where there was kind of arbitrary nudity and things of that nature, she had voiced to me that she did not want to be, she didn't want to be looked upon that way in the industry. She wanted to be able to escape the chains of being objectified by the Hollywood system, which is a difficult thing for any woman, certainly, unfortunately. But she asked me, how can how can I avoid being stereotyped as the beautiful blonde who gets her breasts out or goes naked and has to stroke people in movies? And I gave her my advice on it, on how to avoid it, which I thought was pretty accurate, and her ambition was stronger than what she received from my advice. Is what it was. My advice that I thought long and hard about, because I did care for her and I did understand. I didn't want her to have to do that. And early on in my career, I was put in a position where, you know, I could have gone on, I could have been just a guy who was on a TV series for a couple of years, and then, you know, what was going to be left of me was would be on lunchboxes and thermoses and posters and teen idol things, and I've fought that tooth and nail because I didn't. That's not who I was. So I had experienced something similar in terms of being looked upon as something that you're not, and so I fought against it in the very beginning, and it worked out for me for a while there, and I was giving her basically the same advice.
Now, Mr. Depp, you said that you did not write this portion that's in red here that says Carly Simon said it. Call Carly Simon, she said it better, babe. Is that right?
Yes, no, that's not mine.
How do you know that it was Miss Heard that wrote that?
Objection, lack of foundation.
Overruled. We can answer it.
There are first it looks like it's trying to match my handwriting, but my handwriting is a lot more of a scribble. And also there's another photograph of this where she went in to make sure that there were, that the red was more prominent. I believe there's also a napkin down there where
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation. He's referring to exhibits that aren't in evidence, and
all right,
I have no idea whether they even exist.
I'll sustain the objection now. Next question.
Do you recall whether the lipstick writing was on the mirror when you wrote in the black paint?
No, of course not. No.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to show you one of the text messages that Mr. Rottenborn showed you concerning the injury to your finger. So if we could please pull up Defendants Exhibit 398. This is a text message from you to Dr. Kipper that I believe Mr. Rottenborn showed you on cross-examination. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And why are you apologizing to Dr. Kipper in this message?
I believe that at that point in my brain and in my life and in my heart, I was completely and utterly frustrated with how I was living my life, and I had some disagreement with Dr. Kipper, and I was apologizing to him for having gone against his wishes, or gone against his advice, let's say.
What did you mean when you said, I have chopped off my left middle finger as a reminder that I should never cut my right finger off again?
It's my way of dealing with a painful situation. It's my way of dealing with a painful situation where I resort to humor. So I had lost the tip of my right finger, and so I'm saying to him, I've now cut off my left finger to remind me never to cut my right finger off again. That's not, I mean, when you say I got my finger cut off, or I cut my finger off, or this or that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you did it yourself. And again, I'm a guitarist and have been since I was 12, and that was the only piece that I found. Finger went, the tip of this finger went. The only thing I could think in my mind was, thank God it wasn't the left hand, which is the fret hand. I'm right-handed, so that's the fret. That's where the fretboard is. If you lose a finger from your left hand, you know, I'm not Django Reinhardt, who had only 2 fingers to play with. If I'd have lost a finger from here, I would have had to relearn how to play the guitar all over again. It's just not the case. Even though I say I've chopped my finger off, it's like saying, you know, I bumped into a knife or something. You know, it's not. I'm not admitting to. I think if I was going to admit to someone that I actually chopped my finger off, this text wouldn't be as it is. I think it would have been a long explanation as to why I got to that point. But no, I can't take responsibility for what I now call Little Richard, my chopped finger.
Mr. Depp, at the time that you sent this text message to Dr. Kipper, had you told him what had actually happened to your right finger?
Oh yes, yeah.
And when did you tell him that?
He was aware of that day, the day that it happened. Malcolm was aware of it. Jerry was aware of it. Stephen was. Everyone was aware of it. And of course, yes, when I went to the doctor, the emergency room, I lied to them because I didn't think it wise to cause a ruckus, implicate Miss Heard, and then have 8 million stories out in the press about how she'd thrown a bottle of vodka at me, and it smashed all the bones in the tip of my finger and cut off it was all sliced down through. You've seen the pictures. It was pretty horrible. It was, and I didn't want to put her in that situation. I didn't want to put any of us in that situation. I didn't want to put the film in that situation. That was why I said it was crushed in an accordion door, and it was only the second doctor who actually told me what he was.
Your Honor, hearsay.
I haven't finished my sentence. How do you know?
I'll overrule for the moment. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Should I? Thank you. It was the emergency room doctor was first. The next day I went to see a specialist, a hand surgeon, and this was still in Australia. And he had recognized that my excuse for the finger being gone.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. What the doctor conveyed to him about his thoughts on the finger injury. That's classic hearsay.
Your Honor, it's in the context of medical treatment.
No, I'll sustain that objection.
Your Honor, I think this is a good stopping point.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take our hour lunch recess. Again, do not do any outside discussions, and don't talk to each other about it, okay? And we'll see you after lunch, okay? If everybody in the courtroom could still be quiet, please. Court is in session. Thank you. So we can take a recess till 2:20. Just for planning purposes, though, I plan to go to 5:30 today since we had a late start. So just to let you know, and I know you plan on having a remote witness, which is fine. Just let us know so we can set that up. But also make sure your remote witness knows that this is a courtroom. I don't expect them to be any outside noises or anything else going on in direct attention. And also if they would know that if there's an objection for them to hold off answering until that's resolved. That goes for all remote witnesses when we get to them, okay? All right. See you at 2:20 then. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Defendants Exhibit 394, please. Mr. Depp, do you recall Mr. Rottenborn showing you this exhibit during your cross-examination?
Yes, I do.
And can you please explain when, relative to your finger injury, you sent this text message?
That's the day before. Am I correct?
At the bottom, it says, I cut the top of my finger off. What should I do except, of course, go to a hospital?
Australia, exactly. The time difference, right? Yes. That's what I said.
And so when, relative to when your finger was injured, did you send this text message, to your best recollection?
This looks like it's at the time to me.
And in the middle here, it says, her obsession with herself is far more important. She's so fucking ambitious. She's so desperate for success and fame. That's probably why I was a choir maid. What did you mean by that?
Unfortunately, I meant exactly what I said in this text. It seems it had become clear that there were she seemed to take more care and importance in going on auditions, going to the Met Ball, or going to any sort of premiere or opening or whatever, where she could be.
Objection beyond the scope of the question, Your Honor.
All right.
Sorry.
I believe he was responding to what he meant by what he wrote in his text
And
message
then
to
he said
Dr.
I meant exactly what the word said, and now he's going beyond
All right,
the
I'll
scope.
sustain the objection. Next question.
Thank you, Mr. Rottenborn.
Sir, if you could just answer the question, Mr. Depp, please.
Certainly,
Direct your
sir.
attention just to your attorney, okay?
Sorry, Your Honor.
Mr. Depp, last week, Mr. Rottenborn showed you an audio recording where you referenced your finger getting cut off in Australia. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to play a different portion of that recording that came before the portion that Mr. Rottenborn played. So if we could please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 343, and we will be playing the portion from at 1 hour, 54 minutes, 11 seconds to 1 hour, 56 minutes, 10 seconds.
It's early, it's quick, it's so not, you're not interested in not fighting. You are guaranteeing a fight when you do that. And I've told you this so many times. You guarantee it. If you were interested in not fighting, you would be respectful if you needed the space to make, you would be careful not to perpetuate the fight longer by saying, I need a few minutes, and then actually honoring that. How can I trust you that it will be a few minutes when you've done this in the past and disappeared for hours? You know, I got mad at you in Australia about this. I said, baby, I want to trust you. It's hard for me not to try and work it out. If you want to be the person that's like, I need to cool down, help me do that. Give that to you. But I can't give it to you if you always let me down and fuck up and forget.
Because I gave you a time limit, because I said I'll be back in 3 minutes. So I'm just...
No, it's different.
If it happens...
It's different. You never...
If it happens, I'm just going to say, look, I need some time. That's it.
I'm telling you, that will make it worse.
No.
I guarantee you it will.
if you're stuck in throwing punches,
I'm not talking about throwing punches. I'm talking about an argument.
right? In arguments, you tend to throw punches.
I'm talking about arguments. I'm not talking about the times when it's got physical. I'm talking about arguments. I'm talking about arguments. I'm talking about arguments.
Yes, in our argument.
Earlier and earlier. Now you split. You take off right away. You don't deal with the issue. You don't deal with the confrontation, and you split. Whether it is, and then you do it for an undeterminate amount of time. You do it without actually respecting when you do give me a time. Like, say, I need a few minutes. You've never.
Mr. Depp, whose voices can you hear in that audio recording?
Ms. Hurd's and myself.
And there was a mention about Ms. Hurd getting mad about something in Australia. What did Ms. Hurd get mad at you about in Australia?
There were many instances where Ms. Hurd would get upset, angry, and argumentative and violent in Australia. There were many times. The one that was the day when tip of my finger disappeared, that had to do with a phone call. When she arrived in Australia, she complained that an attorney who was explaining to her
Objection, Your Honor, is hearsay as to what he alleges her attorney was explaining to her. That's clearly
We
hearsay.
can move on, Your
Okay,
Honor.
yes, ma'am.
In the context of this audio recording that we just heard, what, to your understanding, is Ms. Hurd referencing when she says you split?
I would excuse myself from the situation. I would try to get away so that nothing escalated. Because if given the chance to allow things to escalate, Ms. Hurd would take it to the very extreme, which ended up with my finger being chopped off. So I rather thought it was the best idea to avoid things like that.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to show you what's been marked as Defendants Exhibit 272. I believe this is another document that you saw during your cross-examination. Do you recognize these text messages?
Yes.
And these were after your detox on the island, is that right?
That's correct.
Now, where it says here, this was the right thing to do to speed up the process, what are you referring to there?
When we were on the island and I was going through the process of detoxing from the opiates, which was a very unpleasant and powerful, painful process. It wasn't working with Miss Hurd there. I could not properly detox, as every day was another problem or this or that. So I asked that we leave the island and go back to Los Angeles, and I asked Ms. Hurd if she would please allow me to get a bungalow at the Beverly Hills Hotel where she and her friends could go for I needed 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, anything I could get where I could finish the detox by myself without any unnecessary interruptions or unpleasant interruptions. To which she replied that she was felt like I was throwing her out and abandoning her, and after all she had done for me. When the fact is, though, no matter what I wrote to her mother and to her, I needed the time, because I would have gone straight back to the pills. I would have not been able to detox properly without that time alone. And she reluctantly gave me the time. And I sent her and her friends to Beverly Hills Hotel and in a bungalow, and went through the detox by myself in Penthouse 3 for the next 5 or 6 days.
Mr. Depp, last week, Mr. Rottenborn showed you a video that was taken of yourself where you're slamming some cabinets. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
First of all, where are you in that video?
That's the kitchen at a house that I've on Sweetser that I've lived in since mid-90s.
And do you recall what you were upset about in that video?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
I don't recall, as I don't know the date of, there's no metadata that I'm aware of for that tape. Also, apparently looking for any metadata is impossible, as it is
Your
now
Honor,
owned
beyond the
by...
scope of the question.
I'll sustain the objection. Do you want to ask the question again?
Mr. Depp, what do you remember, what, if anything, do you remember being upset about that resulted in what was seen in that video?
I can't recall if it was bad news about my mother's health. I can't recall if it was something to do with my former business managers, finding out that they'd taken me for a very nasty ride. I don't recall exactly what it was about. What I do know is that it didn't have anything to do with her.
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
Overruled. I'll allow it. It's fine.
There was nothing between us before she entered that room. It was me alone.
Okay. Do you know where Miss Heard was before she entered the room?
I assume that she was up in the, she'd gotten out of bed and gotten dressed and come downstairs.
Mr. Depp, earlier today, Mr. Rottenborn played a recording where you can hear Miss Heard seeming to claim that you put a cigarette out on her. Do you remember that?
I remember hearing that, yes.
I'd like to play you another recording, which is Plaintiff's Exhibit 365.
Okay.
And this is, for the record, an 11-second recording, so we'll be putting in the entire.
All right. Any objection to 365?
No, Your Honor.
All right, 365 in evidence.
Couch. You give me one couch. I gave you 3 other couches. Two couches. What do you want? Please. Please, give me a couch.
What do you want?
Couch.
Couch, right. What do you want?
I want couch.
You don't have to shake one.
I want couch.
Couch.
Agreed, please, though. You said you agreed before
Couch,
we
agreed.
started talking. I want to stop fighting.
Have I been fighting?
Yes.
Your Honor, she said this was 11
Everything
seconds.
has been nasty and provoking and mean-spirited.
Not you.
No, I'm not saying
it's
that.
45.
You asked.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I think I misspoke. I may have been 45. I may have misremembered.
She said
It's
it was
a.
11 seconds long, and that went way longer.
I apologize. I misremembered.
All right. It's in evidence.
It may help if could we ask them to move the media player so we can see it too? You just have a blank screen, so.
Okay, it's 40 seconds. Probably because we didn't publish it. There you go. Okay. Okay.
Can we play that? Thank you.
Couch. 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 You give me one couch. I gave you 3 other couches. Two couches. Give me one, please.
Pay attention to it.
Please, give me a couch.
What do you want?
Couch.
Couch, fine. What do you want?
I want couch.
We don't have to speak now.
I want couch.
Couch.
Agree, please, though. You said you agreed before
Couch,
we
agreed.
started talking. I'm going to stop fighting.
Have I been fighting?
Yes. Everything you've said has been nasty and provoking and mean-spirited.
Not yours.
And no, I'm not saying that. You asked me yours. By the way, you just threw a fucking cigarette on me.
Mr. Depp, do you recognize what's in that recording?
Do I recognize what's in the recording?
Yes.
Seems pretty clear that she's ordering me to the couch. And I didn't want to go through with any, again, avoiding confrontation, trying to avoid confrontation in any way. I can certainly say that without hesitation, there is no way under the sun that I would flick a cigarette at her or burn her with a cigarette. If I flicked ashes and an ash got on her, but she's certainly not screaming out in pain as if a cigarette is being put out on her. That's ludicrous.
Do you recall the situation that's reflected in that audio recording?
I believe that's Montreal, Toronto, which was right after the Venice Film Festival. We were at the Toronto Film Festival.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to ask you about a couple text messages from May 22nd, 2016 that Mr. Rottenborn asked you about earlier.
Yes.
And before I do, could you please remind the jury what was going on between you and Ms. Heard on May 22nd, 2016?
On May 22nd, on May 21st, I hadn't seen her since the 22nd of April, her birthday, which was when I left at 4:30 in the morning.
Objection, Your Honor. This is cumulative. He's already gone through all of this in his direct examination. And she asked him what was happening on May 22nd. And he's getting into what happened on May 21st. We've already been through this.
I believe that he's providing context for where they were on the 22nd. But if you could, Mr. Depp, please explain where you were on the 22nd of May in 2016.
As far as I can remember, on May 22nd, 2016, I was preparing to leave for New York for rehearsals and then a tour with the Hollywood Vampires. I was either preparing to leave or I was had left.
Could we please pull up Defendants Exhibit 736, please? And do you recall sending this text message to Ms. Heard on May 22nd, 2016 at 6:19 p.m.?
Yes, I do.
What did you mean when you told her nothing I have to say to you should elicit anything but a sense of ease?
It was essentially, for me, I was bringing up what I'd spoken to her about before, which was a peaceful resolution to the problems, the peaceful resolution in terms of a peaceful and private and quiet and calm divorce. And so that's why I say it shouldn't elicit anything but a sense of ease, because it was not about, I didn't want to argue. I didn't want anything but to end the marriage in the kindest way possible for all, her family, my family, her, myself, etc.
And what did you mean when you said all my love and profound apologies?
Profound apologies is that it just didn't work. We just could not work. There was no way. And I had to try to put a peaceful end, a peaceful stop to the endless opportunities for these constant arguments. If I didn't put a stop to it, then, I mean, if I didn't try to put a peaceful stop to it, a peaceful end to it, then if you don't stop it yourself, it'll stop you. It'll stop you, and you don't know what that could be. But it was horrific, and I wanted her out of it, and I wanted out of it. No one deserves to live like that. No one deserves to live like that. Not her, not me, not anyone. So I just wanted a smooth exit for both of us. That's all I was looking for.
Mr. Depp, last week, Mr. Rottenborn played a clip from an audio recording where Miss Heard told you that you vomit in your sleep a lot. Do you remember that recording?
Yes, I do.
And what's your response to that?
When someone tells you that you vomit, she didn't tell me. I heard it in court. When someone brings up the fact that you vomit in your sleep every night, and, well, first I think you'd be aware of it, and also I think the first thing that I would do is seek medical attention. It didn't exist. I'd never vomited in my sleep every night. There were times when I would get, yes, physically ill from the endless shots that you take when you're just, you're unable to take it anymore, and it does affect you physically after a while. So I would have to leave and go and vomit when fights got into these surreal and absurd and horrible places. But it still confounds me as to why she would record that. I don't know why anyone would record that.
Mr. Depp, the clip that Mr. Rottenborn played was from Defendants Exhibit 8:39, and just for the record, this is a portion of a larger recording which is reflected in Plaintiff's Exhibit 342. So with the court's permission, I'd like to play a clip from Plaintiff's Exhibit 342. And the portion I'd like to play is at 19 minutes 40 seconds to 25 minutes 25 seconds.
Right. Do we have 342 already in evidence? Or
I don't believe so, Your Honor.
no? So you want to put 342, which is the entire audio in?
Yes, I don't
Evidence.
believe that there's anyone else in this audio recording, Your Honor.
I don't believe I hear this before. Okay, 342. Any objection?
As long as there's no one else in the audio recording, no objection.
We can confirm afterwards. So if Your Honor would, if it's more comfortable, we can put it in as 342A.
Okay. Well, and what was the? Let's put 342A. And what's the? I'm sorry. What's the part that you're going to?
It's 19 minutes 40 seconds to
Okay.
25 minutes 25 seconds.
All right. And there's just the two of them in this excerpt. Is that
That's correct.
All right. That's 342A in evidence. Then thank you.
I don't care.
Do you understand why 10 minutes downstairs
I don't care.
didn't seem real?
I don't care.
Did you hear what I said?
I don't care. I don't care.
You do.
There's plenty of things you've done. Plenty of things you fucking done. They were absolute fucking lies.
I didn't
I'm not
ever.
even fucking with you about it. So anyway, I'm leaving. So I'll see you in a bit, man.
Is that what matters?
Your lies.
Is this what matters to you, your party?
Your lies matter to me.
I never lied to you. And what we're talking about tonight is what? Why? Why? Why are you doing this?
I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Why?
So I'm leaving.
What is it that is so important always to run away to? Why?
It's a runaway, yeah. I run because I'm a cop.
Why don't you stay? You asked me once not to leave, and I'm asking you. So why every 5 seconds do I get I'm leaving because there's a fucking movie party I gotta go to? I have never prioritized you behind that. And you of all people, all this talk about not being that guy, you have done nothing but over the last 2 days but tell me that your movie parties were more important, including the night before last. When I said to you the same thing, stay. And today you apologize, said I love you, I'm so sorry, and then today it takes you 2 seconds. It takes you 20 seconds at most to go, fuck that, I hate you, I don't want to be with you, goodbye, I'm leaving, I'm running away, but I'm not running, I'm walking away.
Well, the one thing is for sure, I don't want to be with you. I don't. I really don't.
Then if you don't want to be with me in life,
Goodbye.
then you need to actually do it. You need to actually take off your ring and forget that 5 hours ago you said the opposite. Otherwise, you can't keep throwing that around. You can't keep saying to me that this is something you care about. Is that what it's worth to you?
Yeah. Yeah. For you, from all this bitch, from all these rules, all these...
Rules? Because I asked you to stay.
Because
Because I asked you to stay.
No, because you're fucking
What was
hard.
it? What was it when you asked me to
Because you're a
stay?
pain in the ass.
What was it when you asked
I
me to
can't
stay?
stand it, no.
What was it when you asked me to stay? In Australia, you said you promised me not to leave. You said you promised me not to leave. What did I do?
I thought you would change.
What did I do?
Not change.
What did I do?
Not
Did
change.
I stay or did I leave?
You changed.
Did I stay or did I leave?
You stayed and you didn't change and you were a fucking
I stayed.
pain in the ass and you were a cunt.
So I stayed. And I've been a cunt ever since, which is why you told me about every other day how you couldn't imagine your life without me, including today. So, which guy, does that seem normal to you? Does that seem normal to you? You told me tonight that you couldn't imagine your life without me, and now you're throwing your ring on the ground. Does that seem normal?
That's how you tell me.
That seems sober? You seem normal?
The definition of normal, you.
Does that seem normal?
You.
Does that seem normal to you? Don't go. Don't fuck this all up. I'm not fighting with you anymore. I've been saying this to you the whole night. I'm really sorry we disagreed. You're not perfect. I said this 2 hours ago. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect.
I love you.
But we don't have to do this every time we disagree.
No. No, we don't. We do.
Please.
We do.
Please. Come here.
And you have
Please come here.
every insult.
Please come here. I'm not insulting you. I have not been insulting you. I love you. Johnny, what do you need me to do? I love you. Stop.
Smack me on the ear again.
No.
Smack my ear again. So it fucking resounds in my fucking cranium. You like that? Oh?
Sorry.
I love you too. I don't love you that much. No, I don't. I do not love you that much. To give up myself? No. I do not. I will not give up myself. And you want me to fucking be some kind of cursed goddamn parrot or a fucking weird frenzied dog? No, I won't be it. No?
Frenzied dog? I'm trying to talk to
Or your goddamn fucking lover, Tasia Fantasia. I'm not gonna be that shit, man.
Baby, stop.
No, I don't want to be with you. These are the fucking rules. Fuck that.
You're making this with them. You're doing this with them.
Oh, yeah.
No one's fighting you.
I'm making this up.
Really?
That, above all else, is an insult.
Mr. Depp, what are you and Miss Heard discussing in this recording?
It is another argument that is apparently not an argument to her. The screeching of her voice, the demand that things go her way and only her way. I was done, and I think I stated clearly, I don't want to be with you. I don't want to be with you. I'm not going to be a parrot on or some, little dog that runs through hoops for you. I ain't going to do that. And I wanted out. She said, take your ring off. She still wouldn't let me leave. I did, and she still wouldn't let me leave. So it's just another example of kind of being nailed in one spot and not allowed to do anything but react to her screaming and screaming like a banshee, and then telling me to calm down when I had been pretty calm, I thought.
Where were you trying to go, if you can recall?
Anywhere. Away.
And why did you ask Miss Heard if she wanted to smack you in the ear again?
She had given me a good chop in the ear, one of those where leaves you ringing, and it was not long before that, and so I thought, maybe this will make you happy. Will it make you happy would you like to hit me in the ear again? Would that make you feel better? Will that make you stop this? Would have done anything to have stopped. Outside of taking anything to some physical level, I disagreed with that wholeheartedly. That's not me. It's not who I've ever been. It's not who I'll ever be.
Mr. Depp, I'm going to play another audio recording. This is a different portion from what Mr. Rottenborn played for you today. It's DX 580, 598. I believe the portion Mr. Rottenborg played was designated 598B, so this will be 598C.
Okay.
And first, I'd like to play the portion from 31 minutes, 14 seconds to 33 minutes, 4 seconds.
Any objection to 598C?
No, Your Honor.
And then we will go on and play the second portion, which is 56 minutes, 27 seconds to 59 minutes, 54 seconds.
All right, 598C in evidence.
You know, and it builds, right? Like you build, I build, you know. It isn't like at one moment either of us sign a certificate of saying, or like sign the contract or say, okay, now I'll bloodbath. No. So acting as though there's a choice between the two is irrelevant. I'm not asking you to stay over having a bloodbath. I'm asking you, over walking away. I'm not asking you to have a bloodbath over walking away. I'm asking you to work it out over prolonging it and making it bigger.
Right, but if...
at least that's how I see it.
Indeed.
You know?
But if things get heated,
yeah,
and it looks like it's going somewhere nasty, and the name calling begins, and all that stuff, I've got to get away. Because I don't want to be ever in a situation again like that. Never.
Me too. Me too.
Never. So...
me too.
That's don't freak out if we do have a fight and I walk away.
I'm not going to do that. I'm asking you to stay when you feel you are also in the interest of working it out.
I think it's a good idea for us to take a moment or two, take some time. Take some time to think by ourselves without being, barraged by each other's fucking bullshit whatevers. Let's take a break from it, and then come back, try and be calm, and walk through the thing. But I'm not gonna stand and fight with you. I will not. You can call me a coward. You can call me anything you want. All those names, do it. But I will not do it again.
Please stop asking. Please, can you stop for the sake of this conversation?
I'm just saying I won't do it again. That's all. Okay, great. Then let's take our space, and let's not do this anymore, because I'm really getting frustrated. And I'm really, really, really sick of this argument.
Stop. I'm sorry.
Okay? So let me go, and you go, and I'll speak to you in a couple hours. Okay? Okay?
Stop. Okay.
Why are you saying stop? May I go?
Please, it causes me so much stress when you leave, when you walk away from me with that. It's like you don't understand how much worse you're making this.
I can't believe this.
Please, you're making it worse for me.
Okay, I'm sorry for you.
Please, I'm only trying to tell you, Susie, you're causing me immense stress right now when you walk away like that. There's no reason to be mad.
Well, then say goodbye. I haven't walked away. You're not saying goodbye. You won't let me fucking leave. Let me leave.
Oh my God. Stop rushing me. Stop pushing me in the corner and then poking me with a stick and then saying, why are you saying the words you want me to say? Stop poking me. Stop rushing me. Stop throwing me against the wall and going, what? You don't like that wall? You don't like the fucking wall? Stop pushing me.
Remember, I'm not pushing you. I'm not rushing you. I said, I need space. I don't want this conversation anymore right now. I need space. And I will take my space. Whether you like it or not, I will take it. And you will take your space. But if you keep halting
I'm not doing anything
this
to you.
and continuing
I'm
with
not
the rhetoric,
continuing it. I'm begging you to stop.
I don't... Okay, stop. I'm stopped. Stop. Now I have to go. Okay? So we will speak to each other in a couple of hours. Okay? I hope you have some kind of revelation that makes you feel better. I hope I do too. but we'll just see when I get home. We'll just talk, or we won't talk, or we'll finish this, or we won't finish it. But this is not love. This is not happiness. This is not.
Please stop doing this. Please, you're causing so much fucking stress. I'm gonna die at this age. I'm gonna fucking die. You're causing me so much stress. Please stop. Please. I feel like I have heart attacks almost every day. Please stop. Please stop doing it. Please stop. He's so fucking mean.
Why are
You're
you
a fucking
with me?
bully. Stop. Please stop. I've been begging you not to fight. I just said, can we please have a normal argument? Just even a normal conversation, fucking normal argument. And for the last hour, I've been begging you to please just leave it at that. Let's just go on with our night. I would have been able to come in with you. We would have been able to let it go in a few minutes. It would have been fine. It would just, if we allowed ourselves to have fucking normal arguments. Please, you're killing me with this. You're killing me. You're fucking killing me. Fuck.
Sean, could you, please, I want you to just go. I want you to take your medicine or whatever. I'm sorry that I've upset you.
God, thank you, Sean. I'm ready to go. Thank you so much.
Mr. Depp, in the beginning, well, first of all, do you know where you are when you're having this discussion with Ms. Heard?
The only, the only clue that I have is that Sean is being called. I'd called Sean and said to drive her home, or I believe it was probably at Sweetser, so then she could drive back. He would drive her back to downtown House 3. She didn't seem in any shape to drive to me.
And earlier in the clip, there was a reference to a bloodbath. What does that mean in the context of that conversation?
I don't know. Again, it seems like some word that was. It became
Objection,
part
Your
of
Honor.
it.
He said he doesn't know.
All right, I'll sustain objection. Next question.
Mr. Depp, at the end of the day on Thursday, Mr. Rottenborn played an audio recording for you where you were heard saying you were going to hurt yourself. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And I'm not going to play that audio recording again. It seemed upsetting to you, but I do want to ask you a couple questions about that, okay?
Sure.
Could you please tell the jury when that recording is from?
The recording is from July of 2016. This was a few months after the restraining order had been put on me. I had been on tour through Europe, and then coming through the States, I got messages from Christian Carino, who was both of our former agent, saying that Miss Heard wanted to meet with me in San Francisco because we had one of our last dates on the tour was San Francisco, and I was confused as to why Miss Heard wanted to meet with me, especially since I was under a court order not to come within, I don't know, 100, 200 feet or something of her. So at first I said...
Objection, Your Honor. The question was simply, do you remember when that was from? It's beyond scope.
Okay. So, where were you when that recording was taken?
That was in San Francisco at a hotel room. So we went to a hotel room so that we could finish the discussion that you wanted to have with me.
And how did that discussion go?
not particularly well. I was quite confused as to why I had been summoned to her at that point, since all the news was just about the fact that I had allegedly done all these horrible things to her, and so I was talked into going there. I went and met with her in hopes that she would retract her lies that the world was now had been fed, and in no way was she ready to do that, and I couldn't understand why I was there. Everything had been taken from me. My children couldn't escape the fact that all this had gone down. So
Objection,
I was.
Your Honor, the question was, how did discussion go? And he's talking about his children. It's way beyond the scope.
Just talking.
Sir, just wait for the objection.
Okay. I think he's describing the context around that conversation.
All right.
It's way beyond the scope of the
All
question.
right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Mr. Depp, why were you threatening to hurt yourself in that audio recording?
In fact, I wasn't threatening to hurt myself. I thought that Miss Heard had brought me to San Francisco. At that point, it was clear she was under false pretenses. I don't know what she was after. So I had a knife in my pocket, and I just took the knife out and I said, "Here, cut me." That's what you want to do. Ultimately, you've taken everything. You want my blood? Take it. Have my blood. And then she said, no. And then I said, look, if you're not going to take it, you want it. I know you want it. That's all I've got left. Take it. If she wasn't going to do it, I would have done it. Because that's psychologically, emotionally where I was. I was at the end. I was broken. Not only had I had to deal with everything from coming in from, arrows from all over the world, but now I don't know what she was trying to do. So I just thought the only answer is here. Cut me. Take my blood. That's all I've got left to give you. And obviously, there was no threat to Ms. Heard with that knife. It was about spilling my blood, because I thought that's what the only thing she didn't have at that point. And I was broken and really just at the end. I couldn't take it anymore. I thought everybody, I know that that's his job, but that was quite a cruel...
Objection, Your Honor. We're well beyond the
All
scope.
right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Finally, I'd like to play a portion from Plaintiff's Exhibit 357, specifically the portions at 18 minutes, 43 seconds through 21 minutes, 46 seconds.
357, is that correct?
357, yes.
All right, so is this going to be another one where it's going to be an A, or is this going to be all that's going to be offered?
Why don't we go with A to be
We're going
safe?
with A. Okay, could you give me the numbers again, just so I have them for the record? What are you going to play?
It is 357, beginning at 18 minutes, 43 seconds through 21 minutes, 46 seconds.
All right, any objection to 357A?
No, Your Honor.
All right, 357A in evidence.
It's been going on too long, Albert. Maybe we just gotta stop this. Just gotta stop it.
I don't know how to get my reputation back.
We write a letter together.
That means
Saying that we're going to take this out of the public eye. saying they were going to try and work this out on our own, saying that the media has created such a fucking hateful storm that it's sickening, that we love each other, and that we want to make sure each other is okay. Have we had fights in the past? Have we had this or whatever? Fuck it, they already know all that shit. Don't matter. Here's the deal.
No, it matters. You have no idea. Every ounce of my credibility has been taken from. I mean, and done so in a dishonest way. You know?
Amber, the abuse thing is we've got to deal with that. Yeah. We got to deal with that, Amber.
Any way of my credit is my credibility. You know what?
And why did you put that out there?
I did not. You forced me. Your team forced me to by going on the offense.
I didn't force you to.
From the very beginning. I promise. Look up the timelines to these things. Everything is. Forget it. Forget it. You don't believe what I say. You don't believe what I say. But I did not choose this. Every step of the way has been an offense.
I did not put this anywhere. I didn't. Let me talk to the fucking team.
I did not call the cops. I need to no statement.
IO called the
I did not
cops.
call the cops.
You told IO to call the cops.
I did not call the cops, and I did not give them any statement when they came. I've been trying to protect you.
You told IO to call the cops.
When? While it was happening?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, because the last time that it got crazy between us, I really did think I was going to lose my life, and I thought you would do it on accident. And I told you that. I said, oh my God, I thought the first time.
Amber, I lost a fucking finger, man. Come on. I had a mineral can, a jar of mineral spirits thrown in my nose.
You can please tell people that it was a fair fight and see what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence, and
yes.
It's a fair fight. And see how many people believe or side with you.
It doesn't matter if it's a fair fight. My ass.
Exactly, because you're.
Mr. Depp, when did you have the conversation reflected in this recording with Ms. Heard?
I don't recall exactly when it was.
What's your best estimate?
My best estimate is that it was quite a while before the meeting in San Francisco in July. Excuse me.
How far after May 21st, 2016 do you think that conversation was?
Objection. Calls for speculation. Sorry, he said he doesn't remember when it was.
I'm asking for his best estimate.
I'll allow it if you can answer it this way.
Sorry, could you ask it again? I was distracted.
How long after May 21st, 2016 do you believe that conversation took place?
I would say that it was not too far, maybe a couple of months. It was far enough to where the world media was already bombarding me. So it was an attempt to try to make all the.
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope.
All right. I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
What are you referring to when you said you and Miss Heard will write a letter together?
I was trying to make a peaceful settlement.
And what are you referring to when you say you lost a finger?
A very large bottle of vodka severing my my middle finger in Australia.
And what were you referring to when you said a can of mineral spirits was thrown at your nose?
One of the arguments on the island where Miss Heard had been howling at me with some argument, and she picked up a can of mineral spirits about yay big and just heaved it at me, and it struck me on the bridge of the nose, and right there, forehead.
And what did you say in response when Miss Heard said, "Tell the world, Johnny, tell them Johnny Depp, Johnny Depp, a man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence"?
I said yes, I am.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. Sir, you can have a seat next to your attorney, please.
Thank you.
All right, your next witness. Ben King. Somebody going to go get Mr. King? You can
do away with these.
You can take it with you. Or you just leave it. You can leave it there.
Okay.
All right. Amber Laura.
I do.
All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Will you please state your name?
Yes, it's Amber Laura Heard.
And what is your address?
I live in Yucca Valley, California.
And how old are you, Amber?
I am 36. I just celebrated.
Okay. And do you have a daughter?
I do. She also celebrated her birthday recently. She's 1.
Okay. And what is your profession?
I am an actor, mostly.
Okay. Now, why are you here?
I am here because my ex-husband is suing me for an op-ed I wrote.
And how do you feel about that?
I struggle to have the words. I struggle to find the words to describe how painful this is. This is horrible for me to sit here for weeks and relive everything. Hear people that I knew, some well, some not. My ex-husband, with whom I shared a life. Speak about our lives in the way that they have. This is the most painful and difficult thing I've ever gone through, for sure.
Now, there was a trial in the UK in July of 2020 where Mr. Depp had sued the Sun newspaper and Dan Wooten. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And what was your level of participation in that lawsuit, in that trial?
Well, I was not party to that lawsuit. I was a witness, I suppose the primary witness, since it dealt with the truth of the relationship that I shared with Johnny.
And what, if any, role did you have to play with respect to, for example, witness statements and testifying?
Objection, compound.
I said, for example.
Overruled.
I had to write, I think I gave 7 witness statements under oath testimony. I sat on the stand for 4 days under mostly cross-examination. And up until this point, it was the hardest thing I had ever had to do.
Thank you, Amber. I'm going to take you back, and if you can just tell the jury a little bit about your background. Tell us where you grew up.
I come from Austin, Texas, a small town outside of Austin that you probably haven't heard of. No one has. It's called Manor. And I was raised by my mother and my father, and I grew up with a little sister, although I have a big sister as well.
And your little sister's name is?
Her name is Whit Hurd.
And how much of an age difference is there between the two of you?
Whitney and I are about 1 year. I think we're 16 months apart, so right next to each other.
And what did your father do for a living?
My father broke horses and did construction. He painted houses, and hunted and fished, but that was for fun.
And what did your mom do?
She worked for the state of Texas.
Let me just, since you talked about the breaking horses, can you just tell the jury what your role is in assisting your dad on that and what is involved in breaking horses?
Objection, leading.
Can you just tell me about?
Overruled.
You just got to stay on, basically. I would help him. I was more of a crash test dummy. You know, when you train a horse, it's a wild animal. It doesn't necessarily like to be ridden. And there are people out there who are crazy enough, like my dad, to pick that as a profession, I guess. And he was really good with horses, and I was the son he never had, so it was my job to, stay on.
And what, if anything, did you learn from your father about how to react to the horses?
Well, with training horses, I guess the key things are to not show fear, not get intimidated, not show fear, be tough and calm.
Tell the jury a little bit about your educational background during those growing up years and your work experience.
I worked any job that I could from the time I was really young. I wanted to get out of Texas and do something with my life and see things and do things. So I was in school and really pushed myself to, I just always pushed myself to be able to accelerate the process. I wanted to, get out of school as fast as I could, and I wanted to do more things with my life than stay in Texas.
So what types of things? So where did you go to school when you were younger?
I was a scholarship kid at a Catholic school growing up. Several different Catholic schools, but they were always in the other, on the other side of town, in the wealthier part of town. And I grew up quite working class, and thankfully with as long as I maintained an A average, I enjoyed the benefit of a scholarship, and I did that until I realized that I could take my GED and SATs early, and I did that and placed out of school and effectively left school 16 years old, I believe.
And what did you do for work during those younger years?
I took any job that I could. I worked at my father's construction company, sometimes, just administrative stuff. I mean, it was a small company. But I answered phones, and I worked at a modeling agency that was also, offered photography classes, makeup classes, hair and makeup classes for people that were pursuing a career in entertainment. And I started taking classes that I paid for by working there, effectively as a trade. And I eventually worked there long enough to be able to pay for my headshots, which are the pictures that you use in the industry to promote yourself, in whatever, acting, modeling, or both.
Okay. And what, if any, charitable work did you do when you were still young?
It started off as a requirement for the school I went to, and then I liked it so much, I think, because it meant I wasn't at home. And what was important to me is just to not spend time at home. And I really loved meeting people, so I worked at the soup kitchen every morning before school, during the school year, for about 4 years. I didn't go on weekends, but on weekends I would do various things. Worked at children's museums, typically, because they would work with younger volunteers, and mostly soup kitchens and things involving children. I worked at with deaf kids for a while, and I love it.
And when you worked with deaf kids, what, if anything, did you do to learn to be?
A course at the community college, which I ended up going to get out of high school early, later on, but I would audit classes. The teachers never wanted to kick the, random 12-year-old out of their class, I suppose. So I remarkably was able to audit, I think, the majority of 2 semesters, and that's also helped me learn.
So how did you end up in Los Angeles?
I did a small job in Texas where I played a part in a movie, and the actor in the movie that I was playing opposite had an agent visiting him from LA, and I met her on set, and she said that she had heard about me from another bit part I did. I was taking jobs in Austin for really anything, to be an extra, to apply I did makeup once. Nothing, no job was too small or, for me. So I put myself out there, and she had heard about me, and she said, I have heard about you in this town, and I'd love to meet you in LA if you're ever out in LA. And I was like, when can I come? And she made an appointment with me for the following week, and I used all but $180 or something to get out there, and I landed. I didn't know anyone. I was 17, and I've effectively been there ever since, I suppose.
So when you arrived in Hollywood, please tell the jury what you did to get moving there, get going.
I went to every audition, every casting, every meeting, every appointment that I could. I put myself out there. I didn't have a car because those were expensive. So I took the bus around LA. It was before smartphones. I had a Thomas guide in my bag and a change of tank tops. Not that it mattered, but I went to about 10 auditions sometimes a day and would change clothes if I needed to in the back of, the bus I was taking. And I just hustled from one audition to the other. And I got a bit part on one thing, and then I got a bit part on another thing. And then eventually my roles kind of became more important or bigger. And it's been a slow progression, I guess, since then, of doing either tiny bit parts in bigger movies or doing, larger roles in movies that no one would see. And I guess, it still is kind of like that.
So I'm going to ask you to go from 2002 to 2009. If you could just describe for the jury a little bit what types of parts you had. I think they've indicated you have not been well known here in this courtroom compared to Mr. Depp. So perhaps just take them through a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's fair. I did small roles in big films like Zombieland and Pineapple Express and movies that were well known. My first one was Friday Night Lights. But again, I had small roles in those bigger films. And then I would do larger roles in kind of smaller films. Like I did a project where I was the lead in a John Carpenter film, and he came out of retirement to do that. And that's kind of how it was in terms of my career for those that first initial 10 years or so. It was just going from slightly bigger role to slightly bigger role, and just working my butt off.
So I'm going to take you up to 2008. Did there come a time that you auditioned for the Rum Diary?
Yes, I auditioned for that in about 2008, I believe.
Please describe for the jury your experience in auditioning for the Rum Diary.
Well, I auditioned a few times, which is common in my work. You get a call back, as they say. And I think I had at least one, maybe two callbacks with the director. And then I got a call saying that Johnny, who at the time I think I knew that he was producing it as well, was doing a project that was something very personal to him. He was reprising his role as his late friend, Hunter S. Thompson, and it was a very important project to him, and that he wanted to meet me in person. I thought I would be going for maybe an audition, but it was just a meeting. I went to his office and met with him for a few hours.
And what did you talk about during those few hours?
We talked about books and music, poetry. We liked a lot of the same stuff, obscure writers and, interesting books and pieces of poetry that I haven't heard anybody else reference or know or like. And he was very well read and charismatic, and I think I left the office with a few books that he gave me, and we spent the whole time just talking about things that we care about. And I was so surprised that somebody, I knew who he was. I wasn't familiar, I wasn't a fan of his work. I wasn't familiar with him, but I knew who he was. He's one of the most famous people in the world. So it was already a weird thing to go and get called into his office. And, I'm a no-name actor. I was 22, I think, and I thought it was unusual. It was weird because he was twice my age, and he's this world-famous actor, and here we are getting along about obscure books and weird, old blues, and I thought it was remarkable. I thought it was unusual and remarkable. I left there just feeling like, wow.
So did there come a time that you learned that you were going to be cast for the role in the Rum Diary?
Yes, a few days later, my agent said that Johnny's going to call you. We gave him your phone number. And shortly after, my phone rings, I pick it up, and I hear, this like deep voice on the other line, and he said, "You got you're it, kid. You're the dream. Hunter wrote this part, and you're the dream. You're it, kid."
And
Amazed.
please describe for the jury what that means. What was the Rum Diary and this Hunter Thompson? What was the concept here, and what role were you playing?
Well, it was my understanding that he was bringing to life his late friend. And what he told me was that this character is supposed to be the dream woman, like the dream, American dream. And so I knew what he meant. He indicated to me when he told me I got the role that I was that, that I was the dream kid. That's what he said.
So did there come a time that you started filming the Rum Diary?
Yes, I'm not quite sure how much. I think we started filming in maybe March of 2009.
And where did you film the Rum Diary?
We shot it in Puerto Rico.
Okay. And describe, if you can, the events of the filming and your interactions with Mr. Depp during that time.
It was a bit surreal, filming in a place like Puerto Rico. It was beautiful. It takes place in the 50s, so everything really looked beautiful. Cars and clothing, the music. It was a very colorful shoot in general. I couldn't have asked for, a better scenario. I was on film. I was on set, reading my books, and occasionally Johnny would talk to me, and then he started to be really kind to me, more open with me. When we'd have hot days filming, there'd be this big SUV pull up, and a security guard would kind of usher me into this car, and it would have the AC blasting, and I'd be sitting in the back of the SUV just thinking what a strange experience the whole thing was. We didn't really have a whole lot of interaction on set until we did a scene that involved kissing. We had a kissing scene, and it didn't feel like a normal scene anymore. It felt more real. There are certain things that you do in the job to be professional, like when you have to do that sort of scene, and you don't you don't use your tongue if you can avoid it. There's certain things that you do to just maintain a certain line, and it just felt like those lines were blurred. He grabbed my face and pulled me into him and really kissed me. But we were filming a scene.
Did he use his tongue?
Yes.
Okay. Did you celebrate your birthday while you were in Puerto Rico?
I did. I celebrated, I think, maybe my 23rd birthday there.
And what, if anything, did Mr. Depp do for your birthday?
Well, we were already kind of talking about books and poetry and things like that. He gave me a few really beautiful poetry books. And he gave me a bicycle, like a vintage bicycle, because at the time I was riding around on a bike, and I had a lot of time off since I was a smaller role in the movie. And I think that was it.
Okay. Now, did there come a time that you ended up visiting him in his trailer?
Yes. I think there was we would hang out after or in between scenes or in between setups. We often were, talking about things and would continue the conversation into the trailer, often with the director. Bruce Robinson was his name. And then at one point, we talk about wine. It's another thing that Johnny and I shared in common, a love for wine, red wine. And we were talking about a kind of wine that I enjoyed, and I was, going on about how great this bargain wine was, and I didn't understand how much more sophisticated Johnny's taste in wine was. So I was going on about the virtues of Malbec or something, and I brought him a bottle of this wine, and I set it down. And at some point, I'm going back to get back to set, and he kind of kicked his foot up in the air and basically kind of lifted the back of my bathrobe up. And
can I just stop you there? Why were you wearing a bathrobe?
Because I was doing a scene. It was a period film, so it took place in the 50s. And so I had all of this old undergarments that are for that time era on. And the scene involved me changing. So I had all the costume on. And he kind of picked up the back of my robe with his boot. And I kind of turned around and laughed, giggled, I didn't know what to make of it at the time. And I just kind of giggled and batted it away playfully. And he kind of playfully kind of pushed me down on this bed sofa that was in his trailer, just playful and flirtatious. And he said, yum. And he kind of lifted up his eyebrows like that. And I just giggled, laughed it off, kind of batted him away, and, moved on, went back to set.
And were you in a relationship at that time?
I was.
Okay. And was Mr. Depp in a relationship at that time?
That was my understanding, yeah.
Okay. And did anything else of significant happen during that time period while you were filming with Mr. Depp, other than what you've told us?
We just had this, it was a friendship, a flirtatious thing. I felt chemistry. I felt this other thing that went beyond the pale of my job, for sure. Johnny clearly felt that way about me, had indicated to me that that's how he felt in many different ways. But at the same time, we were both in relationships, and it is a job, and, it was intimidating. And I just remember feeling kind of intimidated and a little nervous about that. And I also was in a relationship, so we went our separate ways, and I didn't hear from him for a long time.
And that's, so approximately how long were you filming in Puerto Rico for the Rum Diary?
A few months is my best
All
guess.
right. And when you left Puerto Rico in the filming, when is the next time that you had any contact from Mr. Depp? And contact could include anything, communications, written communications, as well as telephone or otherwise.
We had no contact until Johnny called me on the phone one day, and I was driving, and he invited me over to his home in California, in Beverly Hills. And it was out of the blue. I didn't even have his phone number. So it was quite unexpected. He called me a second time, but I don't think we actually connected, or we didn't stay on the phone, because we didn't really speak. But the first time was the only time I actually spoke to him, and he invited me over to his house under kind of he said that, we could get Bruce, who was the director, to come over, something about the movie, but it was clearly not about the movie, if you know what I mean. It was, so I said, I said my friends are in town, and I'm busy with that, and kind of hung up, feeling really startled, but didn't know what else to do.
What, if any, gifts did Mr. Depp send you during that time period after you filmed the Rum Diary?
He sent me several gifts. He sent me a beautiful dress, one that I wore in the movie, with a beautiful handwritten note, said happy wrapping, and made a reference to the dress being wrapping paper. He sent me a few gorgeous, expensive, what I can only assume are expensive, collectible books, items, And then when I was away filming on a different job, he he did send me some guitars. I know one delivery. I was informed about one delivery, and my partner at the time intercepted the attempt to deliver and called me immediately and said, "What should I do?" And I said, "Send it back." And she did, and she indicated that there was another one that had already previously attempted delivery, and it was also rejected. I sent it back because I wasn't there, and I wouldn't have accepted it anyway.
Okay. Did there come a time that you ended up having to go on a press tour for the Rum Diary?
I got a call for the Rum Diary press tour in the fall of 2011.
So that's close to 2.5 years after you filmed?
I'm an actress, not a mathematician for a reason. Roughly, yes.
Okay. And could you please describe for the jury what a press tour is? Just explain it to them.
Well, you take a movie once it's completed, and if it doesn't have distribution, you, as part of the promotion of that movie, you go to these various places, normally cities like London or New York, and you do press events in those cities to kind of promote the film, and you go to place talking about the film.
And so you were then called to participate in the press tour for the Rum Diary?
Yes, I had just finished going through the process of separation with my former partner, and I was moving and going through that, and I got a phone call saying, "Remember that movie you did in Puerto Rico? Well, they want you for the press tour." And I said, "Well, perfect timing." And we did that, I think, late October 2011.
Okay. So describe for the jury your interactions with Mr. Depp during the press tour.
Well, on the first stop, the beginning of the tour was Los Angeles, where we both lived, and we did a press day, normal press day, and then at the end of it, I was invited by Johnny to come up to his room to have a drink with him and the director of the film. And I went up to the room to see both him and Bruce, but as soon as I got there, Johnny said Bruce wasn't going to make it. So I stayed. Johnny and I started talking. He asked me about my relationship. I said, "Well, I'm going through it. I'm going through the separation right now, and it's been, rough couple of months, but that's normal." And he said, "Well, that's same with me. It's been." I can't remember exactly how long he said it had been, but that he had split from the mother of his kids, and said that he understood.
All right, and then what happened next?
Then we drank red wine and continued to talk, and the talking became us, reconnect. It was like reconnection was almost instant. It was just chemistry. It's hard to explain that, but we sat on the couch and we talked, and it felt like there was it felt like there was an electricity to the room, and it's how I felt when I was alone with him anyway, and it was instant again. I was like, whoa. So on the couch we talked, finished some wine, and then I got up and left, and as I went to leave, he grabbed both sides of my face, similar to what he did in Puerto Rico when we were filming that scene, and he kissed me, and I kissed him back.
And what happened next with respect to any relationship with Mr. Depp?
Well, then we fell in love. We went on this press tour, and we went. It was a beautiful and strange time. We were flying from one, not together, but going from one city to the next, Europe, New York, Los Angeles, as I said, and we're just traveling around talking about this movie that we did together, that we participated in together, and we were falling in love. I mean, it was just, at the first dinner in London, he sat me next to me. He produced the film and was a part of controlling the film and was responsible for different things than I was as an actor having a small part in it. And we went on this press tour, and I think in London he had me sat next to him at a dinner, and then we ended up spending the night together in my hotel room. And for the rest of the press tour, it was on. I'll put it that way.
All right. And how long approximately did the press tour go?
I don't know exactly how long it lasted. I think, there were press. He took the foil off of this bottle and put it on my ring finger, and I had only been with him like days, or maybe it was weeks at the time. Yeah, it was probably about a few weeks, but it just felt very intense. But we weren't doing normal life stuff. We weren't like stuck in traffic with each other. We weren't going to the grocery store and doing life. We were like hiding in these places around the world. He has so many homes, and so we'd be in one of those homes, or my home at the time, and it would be like a bubble, like we were in this little bubble of secrecy, and it felt like a warm glow, as we would say. Just music and the kind of books that we both loved, and poetry that we both knew by heart, and it was it felt like a dream. It felt like absolute magic.
So while you're dating, I take it you're dating at this point, right?
Sorry,
while you're falling in love, you're also dating, right? Okay.
Yes.
Did there come a time early on that you ended up going to his Bahamas island?
Yes. So shortly after, we, I think, started dating October of 2011, and as I mentioned, this bubble, where he'd come over to my house and not leave for like 3 or 4 days, just smoking cigarettes and playing music and reading poetry to me or painting me or, just talking. And then he would disappear. And there'd be just no way to get a hold of him, no way to contact him. At first, I didn't really think anything about it, but he disappeared at one point, and then came back and said he was dealing with some health issue, and would I join him in the Bahamas? And I think that's when I learned he had an island, and I was on a trip with a friend of mine in Spain, and it was for the holidays, and I kind of